Michael, what do you think about how Donald Trump has responded to the death of Charlie Kirk?
I think it's pernicious in the way he's responded to it. I think he's put Charlie Kirk's death to political use. And I think he's put it to dangerous political use. I mean, without knowing the facts, this is before we had a suspect in the killing of Charlie Kirk. Donald Trump was out essentially saying that the left, the liberals, the Democrats, and anyone who might oppose him was complicit in the killing of Charlie Kirk. This is both not only just specious, wrong, but it's obviously irresponsible. And I can't help feeling that perhaps part of the issue is that he can't talk about it. He can't come to grips with this, that maybe in his mind, inside Trump's head, it's too associated, and how could it not be with with his own assassination attempt? So I think in some way he is running from this death instead of trying to do what a leader ought to be doing at this point, and expressing grief and empathy here.
So, Michael Wolff, what a terrible week for us not to both be in New York together. But first of all, where the hell are you?
Well, I am not in Scotland, but I am very near Scotland.
What does that mean? You mean you're in England?
I'm in...
you say you don't know where you are.
I don't exactly know. I was in London. I am in London for the next week. And we've taken a weekend excursion to a friend's house, not in Scotland, but close to Scotland. In County Durham.
In County Durham. Well said. There was a very funny moment in my day yesterday when you called me, and there was a lot of background noise, and you were like, "I'm at King's Cross Station," as if it was some sort of otherworldly place, when in fact it's actually rather a fabulous station, which I know well because I often take the train from London to up to the north of England, where you are now.
You would, and where you are from.
Where I am from.
So I am where you once were.
Almost. I was a little further down from County Durham in Yorkshire. But anyway, I'm sorry that we're not together in the studio, but I'm relieved to talk to you. And I'm very curious to get your take on what has really been a remarkable week in America.
No, well, it is. And this is a major event, a terrible event occurred. And now we're dealing with the aftermath of this. And the thing about political, a killing of a major political figure or an emerging major political figure is that it does become a political event. Now, curiously, and it's somewhat hard to understand, one of the things that's coming out of the White House and out of the MAGA people is a determination not to let anyone talk about this as a political event. And I'm still not sure exactly what the meaning of that is. So the response is you have to express enormous solidarity with the family, grief, which everyone is basically doing. There's not anyone who is saying obviously that this is a good thing that happened. This is a bad thing that happened, but it is also a thing that is now central in this moment of political time. And I think to try to understand what that means is A, important, and B, going to take some doing.
And of course, Charlie Kirk was a political figure, but it doesn't seem like this was a wildly political act. It seems like an act of a young, disconnected young man. I mean, there are many parallels between him and Matthew Crooks.
No, and to school shooters everywhere. Again and again and again and again, we have seen this, the confluence of whatever deep emotional issues have gone wrong for someone, and access to firearms.
Right, access to powerful firearms. So what are you actually hearing from people within the White House about how they deal with this going forward?
I think they don't know, and they are now responding to this thing. And I think that they're, I was picking up in the conversations I had some reluctance from people around the president, but now as he has embraced this, that it becomes the thing that they too have to embrace, which is that Charlie Kirk and the death of Charlie Kirk is now the weapon to be used against enemies, all perceived political enemies. And obviously that's incredibly scary, incredibly frightening, and incredibly wrong.
There was a strange moment yesterday, which you may have missed just because of time difference and things, where Donald Trump is asked by a reporter how he's doing, because really this has obviously been a terrible week for him for all sorts of other reasons, which we'll come to in a moment. But he says, how are you doing, with the death of Charlie Kirk? And Trump says, well, I'm actually doing fine. Over there are the trucks they've pulled up. They're here to do the ballroom. I'm very excited about the ballroom. There hasn't been a ballroom in the White House, and we're now building one, as if he'd already moved on. And he was spotted at the Yankees game. Well, he made a big thing of being at the Yankees game, where he was sort of dancing away. And it just felt like he'd immediately moved on. It was very strange behavior.
Well, I think it's also very hard for Trump. And matter of fact, I can't think of an instance, possibly briefly after his own the Butler assassination attempt on him, but he doesn't talk about personal feelings. He never talks about personal feelings. Everything is exterior for Donald Trump. And that's, I think, part of what's happened here is, Charlie Kirk and a lot of the people in the White House knew Charlie Kirk. A lot of people in the MAGA thing. I've met Charlie Kirk a couple of times. Seemed like actually a very personable guy. And I think they knew him. They had strong personal feelings about him. And I think that's very hard to process. And what it has now come for Trump, and I think Trump also knew him, liked him, felt a rapport for him, in that this is now, but because Trump can't express this has become this other thing. It's vengeance for Charlie Kirk. It's the left or the liberals who killed Charlie Kirk. And our commitment now is to going after them. So, once more, it's this weird moment in which everybody seems to be having a great deal of trouble processing this on a normal human level. This is a terrible thing that has happened. It happened because of a disturbed kid with a firearm. And it really has, I think we can argue, very little meaning beyond that. And it is only now that with this reaction, and the MAGA reaction, and the White House's reaction, and Trump's reaction, turning into something else.
Well, and the reaction obviously has been that there was clearly a rush to judgment, the assumption that this was done by someone on the left. The grandmother of the boy who is the alleged killer came out and said they didn't even know any Democrats. This was a MAGA family. They were all supportive of Donald Trump, which also adds to their confusion, I'm sure, into how to respond to it.
Total. Well, I mean, the response began before we even knew, and that's another issue here of that inability to wait to see what happened here. What are the facts here? Then complicated by the whole FBI's response in this, in which they became a laughingstock. I mean, so it's no surprise that Kash Patel and what's his name?
Dan Bongino, his number two.
Yes. I mean, these two guys who have no business being anywhere near a leadership role in the FBI screwed the whole thing up, a cock up of enormous proportions. So it becomes necessary somehow to cover that up, or at least somehow distract from the fact that once again, the Trump administration is beset by incompetence.
Well, let me just ask you something, though, because they did get the guy. Was it a cock-up of enormous proportions? I mean, 30 hours later after the assassination, the guy is in custody.
Well, because his family called up and said, you better come and get this guy. So that turns out to have almost nothing to do with the FBI. And what the FBI did was muddle the whole thing, set up a situation which immediately fed all kinds of conspiracy theories, violated all protocols in terms of when this was making announcements, everybody rushing onto social media, for their own individual purposes instead of following procedures. And this includes not only Kash Patel, but also Donald Trump. Again, you have to ask the question, or you have to come to the conclusion that this administration is the thing that most characterizes it, is that they hired all kinds of people who shouldn't have been hired to do jobs that they have no experience, which would let them do the jobs in any kind of professional way.
Well, you're certainly right that people ran to social media. I mean, it really is government by social media now, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think and I think much of the response here, the response to Charlie Kirk's death is a social media led response. And then much of the current reaction today is a reaction to other people's social media. So, I mean, Tucker Carlson did a thing which I saw incredibly fatuous, in which he went down the Twitter or the X accounts of various unnamed people of no consequence whatsoever who were saying things that he felt were inappropriate about Charlie Kirk's death. And the point of this is people say inappropriate things all the time. So, and the point here, this is a larger social movement, according to Tucker Carlson, and this is all to demonize now the left. I give up. I mean, nothing makes sense here.
Well, it's also very difficult to understand why they want to live in this world with heightened fear, heightened violence. This just seems a very scary place for America to be going.
Well, I mean, I think that there is a conclusion that we can jump to is that they see value for themselves in living in this world. They see value in us against them. They see value in declaring their own righteousness and the absolute opposite for the left or the liberals or the Democrats, whoever the people who are oppose them not for legitimate reasons, but for illegitimate reasons.
To what extent do you think that Charlie Kirk's death and the manner in which it happened at a rally shot at from 200 yards away or 200 feet away, brought back Trump's own experience at Butler, Pennsylvania? I mean, it seems something that everybody skated over.
I mean, it certainly should have. I mean, or you could say, how could it not? How could Trump not see this? But he doesn't seem to be relating to it in that way. I haven't heard a word out of Trump's mouth which suggests that there is a personal connection to a horrifying event here. I think this is about, he doesn't respond, is incapable of responding personally.
It's been a terrible week for him too. I mean, physically, the week looks like it's taken its toll. He was on the breakfast sofa on Fox News on Friday, and he just looked tiny compared to the three people. He looked like, physically, your description, or Steve Bannon's description of him as a giant shrimp. The shrimp is curling in on itself. He was physically smaller than the three people sitting around him. And you just felt this is very unpresidential to be sitting on the Fox News sofa. And there were all sorts of reports that they'd actually delayed the news of the capture of Tyler Robinson so that he could announce it on the Fox News sofa.
Well, yeah, I'm sure that is true. You know, again, another strange aspect of this, that they wanted to own this. They want to own Charlie Kirk. They want to own the this terrible event, and they want to put it to use. So I mean, it's horrifying, and I hope actually it passes, that having caught this young guy, everybody realizes this is vastly more complicated. This is not in the end a political act. But then, having said that, the other thing is that Trump comes to that couch, and Trump comes to suddenly wanting to make this announcement and being the hero of this event because things have been going so poorly for him. I mean, we have the Russians, the Russians, the intensity of the Russian attack on Ukraine has actually become significantly greater than before Trump got involved and basically said he was going to solve the problem. I'm going to Alaska. I'm going to take care of this. Well, clearly he's not only not taking care of it, but probably made it significantly worse. Then we have the Russian incursion into Poland. I mean, this is a serious thing. I mean, and it's a serious test of NATO, which Trump has, pretty systematically tried to undermine. Plus, we have inflation numbers that are more than worrisome, and which match what virtually everyone said would be the effect of the Trump tariffs. So again, and this is all a level of incompetence. They can't do anything right. And let's not forget RFK Jr. in the middle of this, appearing before Congress, with almost everybody except the most extreme MAGA faction lined up to say, hey, wait a minute. Could this really be? Are we really doing this to the American healthcare system? And I got a feeling that Trump himself, and this is what I understand, is pretty squeamish about this. He keeps asking people about RFK Jr. And, he asks him, well, how do you think he's doing? And then he says, but he's a Kennedy. So
that's interesting. So you sense that there could be a bit of division between the two of them, that he's hearing from people.
I do. I mean, I think there is a division between RFK Jr. and almost everybody, and even Trump. Trump is a kind of an on many levels, Trump is actually a normal person. I mean, he goes to the doctor. He's concerned about these things. He's concerned about his own health. He's concerned about his family's health. And he is, as well as everyone else, asking the question, what is RFK doing? Does he know what he's doing? Now, for Trump, it's like, well, he's a Kennedy, so he can't be all bad. Again and again, we see these things. He's chosen these people. He's put these people in place who should not be there. And now, chickens come home to roost.
So do you think there is anyone around him holding the line for America's science community and healthcare? Who would be whispering in his ear about RFK?
I think what will happen in this situation is that people will not say anything. No one is going to be put themselves in the position of contradicting Trump until he wants to be contradicted, until he wants someone to say, I think RFK is a catastrophe. Let's fire him. That's not going to come from anybody else but from Trump. But what will happen is people will say nothing. And so I think that's what's going on in the White House. Nobody is saying that RFK is a genius. No one is saying that.
And that silence, does he hear that silence?
No, not necessarily until he wants to hear it.
Until he wants to hear it. Right. And what are the sort of saner people, if one can put it like that, in the cabinet? How are they feeling about things at the moment? Because if you're Scott Bessent, you're seeing that the economy isn't where they promised it would be. Marco Rubio must be looking at what's going on with Russia and thinking, well, this isn't what I expected as Secretary of State. Or do you think they've just completely rolled over?
Well, they have two lives, parallel lives. There's the life of what they really think, and there's the life in which they interact with Donald Trump. And in many instances, there's no crossover there. I mean, in order to survive in this job as working for Donald Trump, then you have to say what Donald Trump wants you to say. There's no other alternative. That's it. Meanwhile, none of these people are necessarily stupid. Some of them are stupid. But Scott Bessent isn't stupid. I wouldn't put him necessarily at the top of the class, but he's not stupid and knows that at some point this is the economy is going to be, he's going to have to own that. So that's going to be scary for him. Marco Rubio, likewise. I mean, Marco Rubio actually is not stupid and has had a long experience and long involvement in international matters, has had a well-documented point of view, which he is now contradicting in almost every aspect. And he knows that he is going to be held ultimately, somebody, if not Donald Trump, then history is going to hold him to account here. So, I think in every instance, they just wait and hope that circumstances will break in a way that Trump will be open to a different approach. But circumstances may not break, and it may well be too late.
You're in England at the moment, and the British ambassador to Washington, Peter Mandelson, has just been forced to resign over his letter in the birthday book to Jeffrey Epstein. Can you tell us the reaction going on there? This is a sort of, probably to Americans, a minor diplomatic incident of not much import, yet it's another scalp that's fallen to the Jeffrey Epstein files.
Yeah, well, I think that there are two things certainly for us to consider the birthday book and how that is overshadowing Trump's week, and how Epstein himself continues to overshadow everything that happens with Donald Trump. As for Peter as for the British ambassador to the U.S., this is essentially the third time he's been caught up in a scandal and been fired. He has actually seems to have an extraordinary number of lives here.
Well, he was a huge enabler of the Labour Party getting elected, which is why he's been able to survive perhaps better than other politicians. But for those not following the story perhaps as closely as some of us were, there was a rather remarkable moment where he apologized for his friendship with Jeffrey Epstein on the BBC, on the morning radio show, which is sort of the equivalent to Good Morning America, I suppose, in Britain. And he said, and there are more embarrassing revelations to come, and then didn't go into it. And everybody was left saying, what? And I must have got a handful of texts from people saying, do you know what the embarrassing revelations are? And it turned out to be an article that was coming out in Bloomberg that detailed more of his reliance on Jeffrey Epstein. But very strange.
And that's true. And Epstein spoke to me about Mandelson, who he liked very much, and they had a very close relationship. I think that this is, whatever. I think the thing to process, and this is also true for Donald Trump, and I think for other people close to Donald Trump, is that these were very close friendships these people had with Jeffrey Epstein. That was part of Jeffrey Epstein's talent. He made friends with many people, and he was a good friend to them, supporting them in all kinds of ways, in the ways of a friend, of being available, of being on the phone, of telling them what doctors to go to, of helping to get their children into school, of just being available. Well, it's not, that makes it sound like he was a manipulator, which I'm sure he also was, but he was also a genuine friend. He was there. He would talk to you when you wanted to talk. He would, he is someone that many people came to trust. And I think that was true about Donald Trump, and it was true about Peter Mandelson, very much true. And also, Jeffrey Epstein helped Peter Mandelson over some difficult personal situations that he had. And so all of these guys now are the affect is that they barely knew him, or they wish they didn't know. They wish they hadn't known him, or they barely knew him. And I'm sure in hindsight, they did wish they didn't know him, but they did know him, and did know him very well, including, and this is, always
relevant.
The central headline is that one of the people who knew him best, and one of the people Epstein knew best, was Donald Trump. And we went into this week with this birthday book, and a strangled effort on the part of the White House. I mean, I still don't know where they hope they were going with this, or where it will end up, that this birthday letter from Donald Trump to Jeffrey Epstein on the occasion of Epstein's 50th birthday, was not written by Donald Trump, when patently, obviously, indubitably, it was written by Donald Trump. And they have called it a hoax, but then when they've been confronted, okay, so you mean these documents are a hoax? It's like, no, we didn't say the documents are a hoax. We said the Democrats are perpetuating a hoax by somehow associating Trump with Epstein. It's the dialectic here is so strangled that that I can't help but think that we're going to get the truth.
Well, it's also so, I mean, the choice of words in the birthday letter are a wonderful secret. I mean, it not only feeds into everything we now know about Epstein, but it makes Donald Trump look complicit.
Well, they were closely involved in each other's lives at a very, pick the words, intimate level. And that's what Donald Trump is running from, running to the extent that almost everything that he does certainly can be read as a effort to distract from this.
Well, certainly the spotlight has moved off the birthday letters this week, but I think that we should dip into the birthday letters again next week. And some of them were very perfunctory and they were like, hey, Jeffrey, have a great birthday. But some of them went into really extraordinary detail about what a good friend he was, the sinister pictures of Jeffrey handing balloons to children in childlike drawings. It's a very disturbing book, and it's a creepy book.
Well, yes, but it is also a telling book, and the tell is about Jeffrey Epstein lived a sex life, a sybarite's life, a life as far from standard middle class values as you can possibly get. And again, the headline is that Donald Trump participated in that life. Donald Trump was very much involved in the lifestyle which we now associate with Jeffrey Epstein of pursuing women. That is a central quest and a central factor of their lives, of both of their lives.
And also I'm very mindful of Jeffrey Epstein helping finance Jean-Luc Brunel, who was a French model owner who got accused in France of rape, the rape of underage girls, that Jeffrey Epstein financed MC2, a modeling company in the US, with the hope of rehabilitating Brunel, who in fact got reaccused and died of suicide, in theory, like Epstein, in a French jail. So we'll revisit.
Yeah, we know, the model culture is a bad culture. It thrived for a period, and then people understood, hey, this is bad. This is out of control. And it has largely been, to a greater or lesser extent, been corrected and restrained since then. But during that period in which it thrived in a truly unregulated sense, Jeffrey Epstein was very much a part of it, and so was Donald Trump.
Yeah, I remember when Diane von Furstenberg became the head of the CFDA, the Council for Fashion Design in America, she insisted that models walking the runway had to be 16 years old.
And even 16 years old, 16. Well,
I'm now wondering if it was 18, but she put an age restriction on it, which was the first time anybody done it. And the truth is that the modeling agencies really became disrupted by social media and by influencers who took matters into their own hand and started modeling. And you got the advent of street fashion. I mean, it was an economic disruption as much as it was people saying this world isn't working.
No, of course, but that era passed or has changed in significant ways. But the era in which Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump were involved in it was the era in which bad stuff happened.
Bad stuff happened. Michael, it's a sober note this week, a sober note. Last week you said you were concerned for America, and it's hard not to think that that concern has passed. It's a very strange week. Well,
that concern has come to pass. I think you mean, because the concern has certainly not passed. And I would go back to the thing that I am certainly most worried about in this week is the response from the White House about Charlie Kirk and making this a
well, they've weaponized his death, right?
A campaign against people who disagree with the White House.
Michael, let's get into Epstein again next week. Enjoy your time in Northern England. I know it well. It's God's own country. And yeah, keep your ear to the ground and come back and tell us what's going on. We'll be back on YouTube next Tuesday evening.
And I will see you from London on next week, and then we will be back together in New York.
Good. I will look forward to seeing you. Michael Wolff, thank you very much. So if you have been, thank you for joining us. Don't forget you can subscribe to The Daily Beast for up-to-the-minute news on what's going on, and goodness knows a lot's going on right now. And don't forget to join the Daily Beast community on YouTube, which is very easy. Just go to the join button below this video and you get all sorts of benefits. What sort of benefits do people get, Michael?
Oh my God, unlimited benefits. You wouldn't believe the benefits.
The benefits are amazing. Extra content. But also it's true. We like reading the comments, don't we?
No, really. Please leave us comments, because they mean a lot. And frankly, they're always interesting.
They're always interesting. And many of you have suggested very good guests for us to get. A lot of you have suggested we get Mary Trump, which we are trying to do, actually. So, Mary, if you're watching this, we would love to talk to you. So thank you. Don't forget, as our First Lady, who came out of hiding this week, would have us be beast. And thank you to our production team, Devon Rogerino, Anna von Ursen, and our editor, Josie Millward.